Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here. If you've had an eye on our channel recently, you'll know I've been playing quite a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it. So much so, in fact, I've prepared this list of 6 things I loved about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and 1 thing I very much didn't. Before we begin, I should say that this video contains spoilers for one of the game's early side quests, and that the footage in this video might give you some context clues as to what's going on in general that might be considered spoilery. You have been warned. The first thing we loved about Assassin's Creed Odyssey is Cassandra. Sorry, Alexios. Assassin's Creed has given us some great characters in the past. I've already made a video about why Ezio is the best assassin, for example, but with memorable figures like Edward Kenway, Altair, and the Fry twins from Syndicate, this is a franchise with a rich history, making it all the more remarkable that Cassandra might just be the best one yet. The writing is great, for one thing. It's sharp and incisive and believable, but it's also brought to life by some truly brilliant voice acting. Melisanthe Mahout, whose name I've almost certainly mispronounced, has done a phenomenal job bringing Cassandra to life. All in all, she's a character who's empathetic, passionate, caring, and also funny. She's great. Of course, there are a few things giving Cassandra a helping hand along the way. The facial animation has never been better in Assassin's Creed, for one thing, making it easier to buy into what she's saying. There's also a more mischievous tone to Odyssey than we've seen in previous games. See, like a lot of Assassin's Creed protagonists, Cassandra has some previous family trauma that drives the story forward. While it obviously affects her a good deal, she's grown from being a girl into a woman in the interceding years. It's nowhere near as fresh in her mind as, say, the grief and fury Ezio feels at seeing his father executed right in front of him, or the pain Bayek carries with him throughout Assassin's Creed Origins. Cassandra is a more upbeat character as a result, and her innate sense of humour ensures there's always some levity to be found in even some of the most dire situations. She can be wholly serious, of course, but she's also just as likely to tip you a sly wink and make a cutting remark. And this character trait isn't just reserved for Cassandra either, it's also reflected in the world around her. Odyssey features some truly ridiculous moments, and they're really great fun to experience. And the last thing that's given Cassandra a helping hand as she climbs to the top of my list of favourite assassins leads neatly into the second thing we loved about Odyssey, and that is player choice. For the first time in Assassin's Creed, you can now choose what you say during a conversation. Sometimes this will be a big decision, like choosing whether to resolve a dispute peacefully or by fighting to the death, but they're just as likely, if not more, to be dialogue options, allowing you to choose how friendly you want to be as the conversation progresses. So while only some of the choices you make will have a lasting impact on the rest of the game, the others are a fun way of getting you to decide what your version of Cassandra or Alexios is really like. Mine, for example, is largely nice and understanding, but doesn't place much stock in the gods. We've never really been able to roleplay like this in an Assassin's Creed game before, and it's really nice to see. It certainly got me more invested in the story than any game in the series since, probably, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Also, flirting with people is really fun, but that's a story for another time. Now, as I mentioned, only some of the choices you make in Odyssey have lasting effects, and it's around those choices that our next point in this list is based, because when you make these choices, oh goodness me, can you ever screw it up? And that is perfectly wonderful. Here's an example from fairly early on in the game, minor spoilers, obviously. You start Assassin's Creed Odyssey on the island of Kefalonia, which is beautiful, but not without its problems. One such problem is that a contagious disease has taken hold in a few settlements, leading to a very heavy-handed approach from the local priesthood. In order to fight the spread of the disease, affected settlements are being burned to the ground, and all the people who live in them are being put to the sword. Pretty extreme, I think you'll agree. In one mission, you go to check out one of these settlements and find a family with young children kneeling on the ground in front of a priest and 2 armed guards. You can choose to walk away and basically sign their death warrants, or you can tell the priest to let them go, which leads to a fight. I chose this option, killing the priest and his guards and letting the family go. Well done me, I thought. I stopped a senseless execution. The only thing, as it turns out, was that was very much the wrong thing to do. Later on, my trusty first mate Barnabas informed me that a horrible and mysterious disease was now ravaging Kefalonia, killing loads of people. That priest was right, Cassandra exclaimed, entirely too late to do anything about it. Now, I'm very much aware that this quest exists as something of a tutorial for players, showing them that their actions have consequences. I'm also keenly aware of the fact that this mission in particular is designed to make players more likely to challenge the priest than to let him do his thing. The family is permitted to plead for quite a long time, and the priest, by contrast, is very callous. So even while I suspected the disease might spread, it was very easy for me to pick a fight and set the family free instead. Falling victim to this very deliberate bit of emotional manipulation taught me an important lesson about choosing my actions carefully, which instantly made me engage more with the role-playing aspect. But it was also weirdly exciting. Kind of like something out of Grimm's fairy tales, it was an incident that made me think, oh no, that was horrible, I did something awful, but it was also kind of thrilling. Making a choice in Assassin's Creed Odyssey isn't always black and white, and sometimes things happen that you didn't foresee, and there's a potency in really royally screwing it up that's strangely intoxicating. I should still probably apologise to all those dead Kefalonians, though. While we're talking about Greek islands, in fact, the next thing we loved about Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the setting. For one thing, it's beautiful. With so many mountains to climb over and gorgeous sun-kissed shores, I found myself pausing just to have a look around quite a lot during my adventures so far. While there may not be as many iconic locations to visit as, say, Assassin's Creed Origins or Unity, there's still a great sense of spectacle from the giant statues of the gods that litter the land, or the occasional temple. The historical period itself is also really cool to look at, with the traditional Greek helmets and other armaments creating a very strong visual impression. The visuals give this great sense of a proud and strong people, those who value martial skill, but also the arts. And that's a character that is reflected in many of the NPCs you talk to during the course of the game. It's very easy to call any colourful game with lots of characters vibrant, but I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a game that truly warrants the description. I also like the fact the game is divided into a series of islands that you slowly start to explore as you play. Each island feels slightly different, which helps give you a sense of progression, but there's something about the geographical separation that makes getting to each new one feel like an event. And with the game carved up into a series of regions, each with its own NPCs, quests, and attendant leader, well, that helps break up the experience into manageable chunks, rather than throwing absolutely everything at you at once, which is crucial in this instance because Assassin's Creed Odyssey is absolutely massive, and there is loads to do. Not least, deciding the course of an actual war, and that can be quite overwhelming. There's such a sense of scale to things, in fact, that it's a marvel the story doesn't just get lost completely in the mix. Thankfully, Ubisoft manages to strike the right balance, which is why the story is the next thing we loved about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. As you probably know by now, Alexios or Cassandra carries the Spear of Leonidas with them as they go about the place, using it as an extremely potent hidden blade. That should be more than enough to tip you off to the fact that you, as a character, are a bit special, beside the fact you are the main character, of course. And sure enough, you get embroiled in a story that has some truly far-reaching implications, allowing you to have a direct say in the course of Greek history itself. As far-reaching and, frankly, vast as AC Odyssey and its story is, however, it still manages to feel personal. Cassandra, or Alexios, has a real sense of purpose, and it's impressive that such a sweeping story can feel so focused on one person. I'll admit that sometimes games with big story arcs about this or that shady organisation wanting to rule the world, well, they put me to sleep. I just sort of tune out because it's difficult to get the sense of how that relates to me, the character, unless it's an NPC desperately trying to tie the two together through sheer conversational effort. Odyssey, on the other hand, not only has me invested in the main characters, but in the motivations and also the identity of the big bad. Maybe it's because so many of the side quests are smaller, self-contained and very personal stories, but the story of Odyssey has grabbed me in a way Assassin's Creed hasn't for years, even with Origins, which was very good indeed. And that is very impressive. Just one more thing I loved about Odyssey before we get on to the thing I really didn't, and probably unsurprisingly given it's me, I would like to talk about the ship-to-ship combat. Despite only being introduced in Black Flag, naval combat is pretty much a staple of the Assassin's Creed series at this point. The formula hasn't really changed much since then, and indeed the mechanics of naval combat in Odyssey feel remarkably similar to those in Origins, but that does nothing to stop it being really good fun. It also feels very Greek, which is a nice touch. Reading a lot of history books and also a lot of Asterix as a child, I came to Odyssey with a really strong sense of what a Greek warship should look like. The shape of the hull, the billowing sail, the eye painted on the prow, and, of course, the great big ram on the front. These are ships made to gather speed quickly and run straight into other vessels, and doing it in-game is tremendously good fun. Again, this is nothing new to the series, but there was something about the construction of Kenway's ship in Black Flag that always made me feel funny about ramming another vessel. I was worried I was going to stove the front in, basically. Cassandra's ship, meanwhile, now that is a ship that was born to ram others, and the fact it does an obscene amount of damage is just the perfect icing on the cake, really. It's also good to hear some Greek sea shanties, even if I have absolutely no idea what's being sung. So those were 6 things we loved about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but what about the thing we really didn't love? It's quite simple really, it's the modern day bits. Now I know some Assassin's Creed fans still really love this stuff and consider it a vital part of the series, but I really am running out of ways to express how tired I am of all the present day fluff. For one thing, it's self-defeating. Given these scenes are taking place literal millennia after the events Cassandra experienced, I know it'll have absolutely no narrative bearing on 99% of the game. And because there's comparatively so little of this stuff next to the hours and hours spent in ancient Greece, there's little motivation to get invested in these characters or worry about what happens to them because, well, it's just kind of irrelevant. I've played Assassin's Creed games ever since the very first one, and I'll freely admit at the very beginning it was kind of intriguing, as well as a neat excuse to explain away the UI. For a long time now, however, I've been convinced that the modern day stuff is just weighing Assassin's Creed down. I'd much rather it ditched all that stuff and just kept us in the historical setting for the whole time. I mean, Black Flag had you wandering around an office and going on a coffee run, for Pete's sake. If they can set an Assassin's Creed game before the founding of the Brotherhood, they can certainly give us an Assassin's Creed game that doesn't have any Animus nonsense. Maybe you disagree, but either way, that was 6 things about Assassin's Creed Odyssey we loved, and 1 thing we didn't. But what about you? Is there anything you particularly love, or loathe? Let us know in the comments below. There are plenty of other Assassin's Creed videos for you to watch on our channel, so do feel free to give one of those a click. Do like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.